was an extremely lively person.
And the minute I did hear her, I knew I was in the presence of the real stuff, and I got all excited.
I don't remember her ever being depressed, no matter what the battle was.
I think if she had have been born in America, she would have also been an outsider there.
We knew vaguely that she had a very interesting history in the resistance.
Her extended family of musicians were murdered by the Nazis.
She was a person without a national identity in a certain way. She was a world citizen.
The world's lucky to have had her here.
I was born in Amsterdam. The house that I remember, that was on the Stadhouderskade. My oldest sister was named Dolly, and the second sister was Renee, and the third girl was I. The fourth child was a boy. My mother had hoped for a boy when I was coming, but it didn't work out. I have a lot of qualities that could have been a boy, but I was a girl.
When Frieda is born on May 10th, 1904, her father, Frieda Belinfante, is a well-known concert pianist who heads a music school in Amsterdam.
In the early days, all of us had to study music. And of course, Dolly played violin, Renee played piano, so my father thought I should play the cello.
Hij had naar de handen gekeken. En heeft hij niet zo best gekeken, want Frieda veel kleiner handen dan ik. En je moet grote, brede vlerken hebben natuurlijk. Want Frieda heeft altijd met het instrument geworsteld. Zoetjes aan in de puberteit en werd ze steeds ondeugender op school. Ze ging met haar eigen weg. Werd heel snel volwassen eigenlijk. En ik juist niet, hè. Ik was heel lang onnozel. En dan zei ze ook tegen mij, sancta simplicitas. Ik leerde Latijn, zij niet, maar zij zei sancta simplicitas tegen mij. Ze was populair. Iedereen was dol op haar. Jongens en meisjes waren dol op haar. Allemaal.
Frieda receives lessons from the first cellist of the Concertgebouw Orchestra, the renowned Marix Lovenson. One day, Lovenson introduces her to the woman in his life, the well-known pianist and composer Henriette Bosmans.
He came in and he put a package on the mantel, and she looked at him as if she could murder him. He said, "Are you coming with me or you want to stay?" And I said, "I'll stay." And he left. And I looked at her and said to her, "Why don't you tell me everything?" And she did. And that was that he had cheated her. She had more than one woman on the line, and that she thought that she was pregnant. And what he put on the mantel was some medicine to get rid of the pregnancy. And I took her a little closer to me, and she said, "Why did you stay?" Because she said, you take the whole load off of me. I have the feeling I'm on a submarine with you. I don't think of him anymore. She said, I don't know what it is. I said, well, I do. Because I love you. And I loved her for a long time. Many, many years. She was a lonesome person because she was not a giving person. She was a person who took more than she gave, which was fine with me because I had an abundance of devotion to give.
Frieda Belinfante becomes ill and can no longer work. The funds for Frieda's musical education dry up and she has to find a job. She starts working as a cellist in the Haarlem Orchestra, conducted by the young Eduard van Beinum. Henriette Bosmans composes her second cello concerto and dedicates it to Frieda.
Yet he had several love affairs with men while we lived together. It was not particularly a sexual bond. I wasn't jealous when she had an affair with a man. She promoted my feeling of being not such an important musician by her attitude. We had our rooms on different floors. I heard her downstairs practice maybe an hour and a half. Then she would come up and said, "Aren't you done yet?" "Oh," she said, "if 1 hour and a half is not enough, you never learn it."
In the 7 years that they are together, they often go out with friends. One of them is the flutist Joe Veldkamp.
Joe always said to me, "You don't think of your own music, you don't think of your own talent, and you need to develop that." And so I got very close to him as a friend. He was a real bohemian. But he made up his mind he couldn't live without me, and he wanted to marry me, and I said, "I'm not the marrying type. I don't think that I can love a man that way. I don't think so." I said, I just always have great admiration for women, and it's not good. Well, he said, that's what it is. I want to be where you are. So I said, well, then I guess we better get married. When I said that I was going to get married, she said, "I'll be there for breakfast." We kind of drifted apart.
Frieda leaves the Haarlem Orchestra. Stimulated by Joe Veldkamp, she embarks on a successful solo career.
And we were so outwardly happy, a couple. I was, in a way, very grateful for his love and for his devotion to make me into some musician. We had a quintet with Rosa Spear. We did things together. He had an orchestra and he wanted to be a conductor, and I let him do that, and I encouraged him. But he was not a conductor because he was unable to be a leader. He was not a leader. He would ask them to play softer with a finger on his nose like this, and he would say, well, it's still too loud. And I said, why don't you swear a little and say, for God's sake, can't you play a pianissimo? I said, he tried to be a conductor. He had the ears of a musician. I've not ever heard anything like it. His musicianship was absolutely fabulous. But he was not pushing anything. He said, well, I don't pay them. I said, you don't have to pay them to play soft. He got less and less happy. He said, I've never felt comfortable with you. We were very good friends, but I was never as carried away and as romantic as I can be the other way.
Frieda is 29 and her marriage with Joe Veldkamp is over. She teaches music at a high school. The principal asks her to conduct the school orchestra. She agrees and discovers that conducting is her passion.
I got a phone call from the singers of the Amsterdam University. Would I conduct the choir? So I did that. Then comes a big lustrum, festivity, big concertgebouw hall, 110 musicians and singers on the stage. So I climbed up. That concert, fortunately, was attended by Mrs. Poss, head of concerts for all. She heard the concert and said to me, if you can do that with an amateur orchestra, can you imagine what you can do with professionals? I said, well, I wouldn't get professionals to play for me, for a woman. She said, why not? Try it. So I tried it. My best friend, Larry Kahn, hiding behind the newspaper that she was reading, said, you can't do that. You have a good name as a cellist. You can't just do that and get up there and say, I'm a conductor. Why would you be a conductor? You haven't even been trained as a conductor. I said, no, but I have had my eyes and ears open. I think I can do it. She said, if you get a good write-up in the paper, you're greater than Toscanini. I said, I'll remind you of that. She had the Telegraaf, I think, and I had Handelsblad. When I came in, she said to me, "How's your paper?" I said, "Mine is fine." And she looked sheepishly at me and she said, "So is mine."
The concerts of her orchestra, the Klein Orkest, are a success. Reviewers write, Frieda Belinfante has a talent for conducting. Her knowledge of the scores is complete and her musicality pure and healthy. This orchestra richly deserves its place in the world of music, as well as a glorious career.
Op een hele stille zondagochtend met prachtig weer fietste ik in de Laressenstraat. En toen zag ik in de verte iets. En dat kwam dichterbij en toen zag ik dat er 2 vrouwen waren die elkaar bij de hand hielden en 1 hand ieder aan het stuur. En die zwaaiden en zwierden door die verlaten Laressenstraat. En het was zo'n prachtig gezicht. En ze hadden witte mantelpakken aan en met die mooie zwarte haren. Dus ik was helemaal, ik dacht, wat is dat? En toen zag ik ineens dat het die Frieda Belinfante was, die ik alleen maar had gezien, heel ernstig en dirigerend. En dat vond ik zo enig dat ze ook op die manier kon zijn. Helemaal ontspannen en vrolijk en ze hadden een dolle pret. Ik vond het zelf zo mooi dat ik omgedraaid ben en erachteraan ben gaan fietsen. En ik weet het niet zeker of het nou echt is of in mijn fantasie, maar ik geloof dat ik daarachter ook mee gezwierd heb. En toen dacht ik ineens van dat mens wil ik violes hebben. Ik was 16, 17 jaar. En toen heb ik enige jaren violes van haar gehad. Ik weet niet wat het was. Het was het voorkomen, de hele optreden. Ze was anders dan anderen. Ze durfde dingen te doen. Een vrouwelijke dirigent in die tijd was eigenlijk nog wel iets bijzonders. En dan nog met een eigen orkest en zo. Ja, ik was gewoon onder de indruk.
In 1939, she travels to Switzerland in her car to meet the famous conductor Hermann Scherchen. Scherchen had left Nazi Germany to live in Switzerland. In a small castle near Neuchâtel, he teaches young conductors.
There was no orchestra. He sang on the right pitch. The instrument you were pointing. He was fabulous. He was tough on. He said in German, "Sie hopsen." That means you jump. You know, I worked out, but he criticized.
"12 young conductors compete in the final concours. Frieda takes first prize.
The first prize was to conduct the orchestra of the Swiss Romande, but that never came off. That was my prize, but that was the end of my conducting, because that was 1940.
May 10th, 1940. German troops occupy Holland. The family meets to discuss their worries about Frieda's brother Bob, who is a family doctor in a small village in the country. They haven't heard from him since the invasion.
And as we are there, the phone rings, and I look at my mother while she's answering it, and I see her just absolutely like this. And then she hung up. And the telephone call was from a stranger who came on the bicycle all the way from Laagkeppel, which is near Arnhem, to tell my mother that my brother and his wife had committed suicide. And because that was all we heard. He was the stranger and brought the message. He left a note for my mother and said, "Mother, don't grieve about us because we could never have been happy in a world like that." And I thought to myself, if I would have been there, I would have said, "Bob, the world didn't change. The bad part just came too close."
Frie zei, ja, Bob heeft dat nou gedaan. Maar ik blijf vechten als de Duitsers mij te pakken krijgen. En ze willen me in mootjes zakken. Dan moeten ze het maar doen. Maar ik blijf vechten.
At a club for people involved in the arts, Frieda meets Willem Sandberg, leader of the artists' resistance against the National Socialist Culture Chamber. All artists are obliged to become members of the Culture Chamber in order to continue working. Jewish artists are excluded from membership. Frieda foresees that this will be the beginning of the persecution of Jews. Many of the members of her orchestra are Jewish. Frieda is at the start of a successful conducting career, but she takes a resolute decision.
I said to the orchestra, "Boys, there's no orchestra. We have never existed." Because I knew that it would be a gradual process and you don't know when to stop. I mean, you get talked into. And that's exactly what happened.
In October 1940, the Germans introduce a new law requiring everyone to carry identification at all times. Jewish identification papers are stamped with a J. Frieda starts forging papers.
It's a sick thing, a passport picture. And the other side was a seal, under which was the fingerprint. They fingerprinted on a seal. And so you have to keep the fingerprint, because so that I had to take the glossy part off without injuring the backside, the seal, which I was good at.
German anti-Jewish measures follow each other in quick succession. Playing music written by Jewish composers is forbidden. Jewish musicians are expelled, first from the music schools, next from the conservatories, and then from the orchestras. The 16 Jewish musicians of the Concertgebouw Orchestra must also go. They say goodbye to an emotional audience at a concert conducted by Eduard van Beinum. By May 1941, the entire Dutch music world has been Aryanized. At Frieda's home, forged passports are handed out. When a Jewish couple doesn't arrive at the scheduled time, Frieda goes to their home, where she is arrested by a member of the Gestapo named Kurt.
I say, "I don't understand the laws. My father is Jewish and my mother is not. And I'm not considered Jewish, but my brother is because he has a Jewish wife. And you mean I could not visit me?" "Oh, yes, you could visit your father." I said, "But my father could not visit me." Anyway, I start playing the dummy. This is in the car, going to Gestapo headquarters, and he got so impatient with this dumb woman that he said, "You can go home."
Ik heb les gehad van haar tot ik ging onderduiken. Zolang ik bij haar kwam, was het alleen maar fijn en sprak je niet over ellende.
In 1942, Frieda conducts one last concert. The musicians are Jewish and non-Jewish music students.
Dat was een concert in het gebouw van de Joodse gemeente op de Plantage Parklaan. Frieda was half Joods en mocht dus zeker niet een concert leiden van Joodse muziekstudenten. Joden en christenen mochten eigenlijk helemaal niet meer met elkaar omgaan, zeker niet in verenigingsverband. Het was een hele bijzondere bijeenkomst, omdat je wist Er kwam een buitengewoon spannende tijd. En je wist eigenlijk niet wat er ging gebeuren. Dus dat laatste concert in vrijheid heeft een hele grote betekenis. Want
a very dear friend from Frieda's childhood, the soprano Ellen Schwartz, has a Jewish husband and decides to flee with him.
She had a couple that was going to take people out of Holland for money. And I met the couple and I thought they were terrible. They must have worked on that for weeks to be friends of Ellen Schwartz and her second husband. And I immediately had the feeling they were no good. And I could not get her to even believe me, listen to me, follow me. That is true. They were traitors. A person who is able to make money by pretending that he will help you to save your life and then be the traitor who sells them to the Gestapo to be murdered when they get to the gas chambers, that is so low and so far down in the depth of evil that I hate to talk about it, I hate to think about it myself. We could give any Jewish person a false identity card, but there would not be a duplicate in City Hall. I said, well, we have to destroy that. That's when the plan got taken up. I brought in Rudy Bloemgarten. He worked as my right-hand man when we were preparing the destruction of the files in City Hall. Rudy was one of the workers.
March 1943. The attack on City Hall is a success. Thousands of cards with identity details are destroyed. It is one of the most important sabotage actions of the Dutch resistance. But the group is betrayed. Frieda goes into hiding, moving from one address to another. From her hiding places, she hears about the arrests of her resistance comrades, about their trials and death sentences.
Ik weet dat vooral de dood van mijn broer Rudy haar persoonlijk heel veel gedaan heeft. Omdat ze gewoon van hem hield. Maar ze ging verder.
For 3 months, I was disguised as a man. I went into the barber shop and took my hat off and put it on the hook. And a barber walks up to me and he said, "What do you want, sir? Shave or haircut?" And I said, "No, just haircut." I had contact with Sandberg. He said, "We are very short of money. Do you have any source?" And I said, "Well, I have some people that I know are very wealthy." And one was Mr. Heineken. Anyway, I went to see Mr. Heineken. And he said, "How come you trust me?" I said, "Well, I go by faces." He said, "You're right. But you know, I have a problem because I have my office riddled with Germans, wanting to know everything, where the money comes from that is spent. Unless," he said, "you have an idea." I said, "Maybe I do. Buy my cello." He said, "That's pretty costly, you know." and I have no way to use it. I can't play now. They would find me immediately. Who's playing cello? And I have no time. He said, that's a wonderful idea. And he did. So I bought my cello, and he gave me the money. See, this was the time that we had to do everything in such a hurry, and the raids were worse. That was the end of 43. And I felt I'm jeopardizing everybody where I go. As a man or as a woman, it doesn't make any difference. I knew I would be caught pretty soon. So I decided I had to leave.
Frieda's escape route starts in Brussels, runs through Paris, and ends in Switzerland. She meets the young Tony from Prague, the contact person for the refugees. By the time Frieda arrives in Brussels, the escape route has been discovered by the Germans. She travels from Brussels to Lille, where she has another contact address.
I find a place, and the door opens, and it is Kurt, the only Gestapo man I know who has arrested me in Amsterdam. It is too unbelievable, but it is true. I ran for my life. When he opened the door in Lille and said, "Entrez, madame," in French, perfect French, I said back in French, "Ce n'est pas ce qu'il me faut," this is not what I'm looking for, and ran down the stairs. And I got out in the street, and I get into a store, and I hide behind a stand, and I look at the door, and it doesn't open. He didn't see me go in.
Frieda manages to reach Paris. After a few weeks, she receives a tip on how to reach Switzerland via a perilous and relatively unknown escape route. Tony, her contact person, accompanies her. They travel to the border between France and Switzerland, where Frieda is to meet a peasant family.
And we got to the farm, and I talked to the farmer, said, "Vous n'arriverez jamais." That means you will never arrive in Switzerland. And I said, well, I'll take a chance. And up comes a young man on ski from the French resistance. So the farmer said, well, he will guide you and tell you where is the best way to cross the river. We had to take our clothes off completely, bundle them up on our head. I said to Tony, you're much taller than I am. If the water comes to here with you, I'm under. Go slowly so that I can watch it, because I don't swim. We did get on the other side. We walked for 12 hours without stopping, and he wanted to stop all the time. He said, I'm exhausted. I said, there's no stopping in the snow. We haven't met anybody that whole day. It was an absolute silence. It was gorgeous. It was a trip I will never forget.
They are arrested and taken to a prison in Chaux-de-Fonds. Frieda uses Herman Scherchen as a reference to prove that she's Dutch.
And then I came back and I said, the references you gave are verified. And I said, where's Tony? And he said, something like, that's none of your business. And they had sent Tony back into the snow in France. They asked me, were we a couple? Were we engaged to each other? I said, no, he's just a friend. The Swiss did not keep men anymore, only women. And I could have saved his life by just lying and saying we were a couple, but I didn't know.
Frieda is taken to a hotel camp near Montreux, where another 160 Dutch refugees are staying.
I was getting tired of these 160 people that didn't do anything. And they were starting to gossip about me and about my being a lesbian and treating me. So I had felt I wasn't even alive. I felt dead inside. I don't remember anything of my homecoming except that I found my apartment sealed by the Gestapo and everything intact.
At the Concertgebouw in Amsterdam, the audience spontaneously sings the Dutch national anthem when conductor Eduard van Beinum appears on stage. Van Beinum was a member of the National Socialist Culture Chamber and collaborated with the Germans. A Dutch daily writes bitterly, a complete victory for the collaborators. One wonders what so many artists fought for.
It was a very cold shower, what you got when you came back.
In het Victoria Hotel in Amsterdam tonen Franse mannequins de voorjaars- en zomermode zoals Parijs die brengt.
Nobody was mentioning anything about those 5 years that I remember. They were just doing their own thing and trying to make money and make a living.
In de zaal van het Amsterdamse Concertgebouw zijn de stoelen aan de kant gezet. Er is bal.
Things didn't change. We thought everything would be better, politically better. I didn't have the same feeling of joy in my work. I didn't have the same feeling to build something up.
At the end of 1947, Frieda packs her bags and her cello and leaves the Netherlands. She has the address of a school friend in New York.
She wanted to go to a new land, someplace that she thought had opportunity, someplace that was warm. I think that she was cold. She felt cold, and she felt cold in her heart from what she had experienced. I think it was just like a post-war syndrome.
It was not something for me, New York. It's just too big. So I talked to my friend. I said, you know, what I would like to do is just go to the United States and see where I would like to settle down.
Oh, give me land, lots of land under starry skies. Don't fence me in. Let me ride through the wide country that I love. Don't fence me in. Let me be by myself in the evening breeze and listen to the murmur of the cottonwood trees. Send me off forever, but I ask you please don't fence fence me in. Just turn me loose, let me straddle my old saddle.
I went all over the
western
United
skies.
States because we were on the way for a whole month and traveled everywhere. It was a wonderful experience. It was a complete fresh beginning for me. I mean, people didn't have any idea what Europe went through and what Holland went through. And they were very open-minded and very hospitable.
She arrives in Los Angeles, where Ivy Fraser lives. Frieda met Ivy on the boat to America and stays with her in Los Angeles.
Crystal Cove is a little place that is just before you get to Laguna Beach. And we bought together a house in Crystal Cove because we wanted to share, which of course was cheaper. Ivy was never a great passion of mine because she was almost not interested in sex, but she was very interested in me, and I liked her. Yeah. She was original. Her behavior was unusual, and that attracted me. She had a style all her own, very independent person.
In 1952, she receives the news that Henriette Bosmans has died in Amsterdam.
Jetty was the one I said, I love you, and I devoted my life to. The older I became, the more I was the adult, and she was the child. See, I was a child that day that I said to her, I take care of you. And she said, why did you stay? And I remember, and I said, because I love you. That came so spontaneous, but it came from so deep. That was really my first real love. And I admired her, and I was devoted to her.
Frieda starts building a reputation playing the cello and viola da gamba, a large violin which is held as a cello.
I get an engagement. Somebody wants a cello, trio, violin, cello, and piano, and asked for material. And I have the brochure, Frieda Belinfante, cello, viola da gamba. I pick up the newspaper in Santa Monica where we played, and I see that the concert is announced, and it says, Lisa Minghetti, violin, Frieda Belinfante, cello, and viola da gamba, piano. I've never laughed as hard in my life because it was so funny. I never said anything, but unfortunately I lost the paper. It was a Santa Monica paper that said Viola da Gamba will play the piano.
She plays in the orchestra of one of the larger Hollywood studios. The job is well paid. She meets a man who asks her if she is the well-known female conductor from the Netherlands.
He said, would you like to conduct? I said, of course I would, but you can't just say, here I am, I'm a conductor, where's my orchestra? He said, I'll get you an orchestra. I said, it doesn't pay, but I'll get you an orchestra. I said, are you serious? He said, yes, because there's so many musicians here in Hollywood that never play a symphony, that always play these noises that you see on the film, a little of this, and a little somebody falls down the stair, and a little of that. They don't play symphony. I said, you tell me when you're ready, when you have your orchestra together. He did. In Highland Avenue High School, I come on a given day, and there's an orchestra sitting. And we play, and we enjoy it.
In 1953, started a Vine Street Choral Chamber Group, but I noticed this picture right here showing her with a guest conductor, and Maury Brenner, who looked for a conductor who would have the same principles and ideals of music as those portrayed by a small group, and that he really lucked out in finding someone of the caliber of Miss Belinfante. It says here, from 1937 to the outbreak of World War II, she had her own chamber orchestra in Amsterdam. So she came with the highest credentials, too. And I don't think she had very hard time in getting in the studios, which was very unusual because it was like a clique that would be in the studios. And you couldn't break through. And for a woman to break through that, I think, was absolutely fantastic.
After months of rehearsing and playing for their own enjoyment, Frieda and her orchestra are invited to play a concert at the Redlands Bowl in Redlands, California.
The whole bowl was filled. And then we played that Bizet Symphony, and it went really beautifully. It was the most poetical concert that I remember. I had 12 curtain calls. After the concert, everybody said, why can't we have something like that in Orange County? Because this was beyond Orange County. Nobody played music in Orange County. It was a barren cultural territory. They got a little gathering where they listened to recordings. That's all they could do. They got a little committee together, and I went to an auditorium in Santa Ana. We got our concert, and that started the Orange County Philharmonic.
She was the seminal event, the seminal, I won't say person because I was partly that person too, but she was the thing that made, well, if it's possible, she had the knowledge of the talents.
Frieda is 50. For the second time, she has her own orchestra. Never before had a woman been the principal conductor of a professional symphony orchestra.
This is one more committee meeting, I suspect, down at the Balboa Bay Club in Newport Beach. And I'm there at the head of the table. And we're talking about developing the Orange County Philharmonic.
They were rich, so everybody wanted to be in on this event, and they made committees. And I had an army of women working.
This was supposed to be democratic. It meant everybody was invited who wanted
One
to go and act.
calendar year, I gave 75 speeches to promote music.
There's Frieda. Shown that she arrived Friday evening at the Balboa Bay Club with members of the party to attend the Valentine Ball. She knew music very well, and she had a great sense of color, and she knew when to bring out parts of the orchestra and when to, keep it piano, and she always had excellent control of the orchestra. She was really received as a very special person that she was, and she was a very gregarious person. She loved people and was very good at just talking with people casually. She had a great social success, I would say. She was encouraged to keep it feminine because we thought it was, the feminist movement hadn't yet started, but those of us who were involved felt it was great that a woman was doing this, and we thought we should keep it look like a woman.
Everything went just fabulous. More social every year. I have a press, stacks of good press.
In 1957, the Los Angeles Philharmonic comes to Orange County for a concert at the Santa Ana High School, Frieda and her orchestra's home turf. Eduard van Beinum is the conductor. The newspaper writes, Frieda Belinfante and Eduard van Beinum chatted after the concert. Van Beinum and Mrs. Belinfante were colleagues in the Netherlands and worked together regularly. Their collaboration was cut short by World War II. Shortly thereafter, Frieda is told by the board of the Orange County Philharmonic Society that her contract will not be renewed and that the orchestra is being disbanded. Friends and acquaintances are shocked.
One of my friends wanted to call an influential person because I didn't get my contact, a note. She called. Suddenly her face changed and was quite white and said, "Oh, I didn't know." That was all. Because I was sitting right there. And I knew it was something that she didn't want to repeat or go into conversation. So I have a feeling that it was the gossip about my lifestyle.
I do know that the recently deceased, perhaps, or at least retired, director of the Los Angeles Philharmonic. And he didn't like seeing anything growing up anywhere in the Southern California basin that could possibly constitute competition for his LA Philharmonic. So he didn't one bit like what was going on in Orange County. And I'm digging in now to stuff I really have to think about to remember correctly and properly. But my impression is that I don't want to say that he wanted to destroy us, but he didn't want to see us get along too well either. But he was playing hardball. Now that's a very American expression, but I presume you know what it means. When you play hardball, it means you're playing mean ball. In other words, they squashed us out, is what I guess I should be saying. They came in and they brought themselves in and they plunked themselves, and we just didn't stand a chance because they had a degree of funding and money behind them that we just didn't have command of.
Frieda and her orchestra say goodbye to their Orange County audience. The house at Crystal Cove is sold. Frieda and Ivy separate. Frieda moves to Laguna Beach.
When you come too early with your pickup, ta-da, you want to play it in the beat, you speed up the tempo all the time. See, you shouldn't do that. Actually, you should play the pickup kind of on the beat. Ta-da, ta-da. It's 3 measures before the heavy chords come in. Okay? Tam, ta-tim, tam, ta-tam, ta-ta-ta-ta-tam. Those you hold back, okay? Go ahead. You have nothing. Crescendo.
You could have transplanted Frieda Belinfante in any country in the world, and she would come up on her feet, and she would say that about herself: I spring back like a cat. You cannot keep me down. And that was true. And that was true in illness. That was true about financial setbacks. It was true about discrimination against her. It doesn't matter. She would come back because she had such confidence in herself, such a belief that what she did was the right thing.
Put down your books and pick up a gun. We're gonna have a whole lot of fun. And it's 1, 2.
Orange County, where I was living and where Frieda was living, was a very conservative county. And there was a lot going on in the 60s that was very disruptive. And I remember thinking that I was so grateful to finally talk to a liberal person. I really was having a very hard time finding anybody that was a Democrat or even a liberal. And our friendship developed from that time on.
Same thing here with the pedals, same thing. Crescendo, and wait.
At a higher level. But Frieda got a hold of me, and she just made my life. She encouraged me and gave me opportunities. She had some recording equipment, and we played and recorded. And I don't even know that we did it more than once. I think we did it once and that was it. And she made these records for gifts.
Always very maternal with me, and I think with all of her students. Even though she wasn't a very feminine woman, she was very caring and loving. One of the earliest ideas that she gave me was that one cannot be neutral, that neutrality did not exist. That she told me very early about the Swiss neutrality, so-called neutrality, what that meant, which was really a kind of collaboration with the Nazis. And she said, if you do nothing, it means you accept the situation, and it means you approve of it.
In the late 80s, Frieda returns to the stage for one last concert at the Irvine Bowl in Laguna Beach.
We quit going to concerts because she began to hear the whole string section out of tune. And she would say to me, I don't understand why the violin section is playing out of tune. And she really just didn't come to grips at that point with the fact that her hearing was so altered that she was hearing it out of tune. They were not playing out of tune. So that was a very sad thing that was happening. She was slowly being deprived of all of her enjoyment of music. By then, of course, she was 85 years old. And we thought it was a nice time to retire, that we could retire in Santa Fe, which we both loved very much as a city, and that we would just enjoy ourselves. But alas, that wasn't the case, because she became ill almost immediately with cancer after we got there. She would say to me on every couple of months or so, and she called me a special nickname. She called me Dove. She didn't call me Bobby anymore after 10 years or something. She said, Dove, do you think there's a reason that I need to stay on?
There are so many highlights and so many deep miseries that have happened in my life. When I was young, I was upset. My day was ruined when I saw a dead animal that had been killed by an automobile. But I don't get that feeling anymore because of all the things that I've seen that are much worse. I mean, what I saw in the war, there are some little things that happen here or there that people are doing something good for somebody, but it's almost invisible from all the junk that we get to read of the murders and the tortures and how human beings still torture each other, and that's what we get. That's our food. And at a certain time, you don't feel anything anymore. And I know that personally, because when I arrived in Switzerland and I was a refugee in that hotel with 160 Jews that had fled at various times, all I felt is that my soul was dead. I thought I would never make a note of music. I wouldn't know why. But I didn't feel anything. Nothing affected me. I didn't have any desire to make music. I didn't have any, I thought that was past. And I think it took about 3 months to a year to be able to be myself again. It kind of sank down, and it kind of prompted me to have an entirely different look on life. The real joy that I had as a child, and the trust in human beings and the trust in humanity, that has never come back. The only thing that keeps you alive is that there is beauty in human beings too, but not enough.
In the last few days before she died, she said, I have had a wonderful dream. Oh, Frieda, what is that? She said, well, I am in California, and I'm in a big, big swimming pool. And of course, Frieda had a very great fear of the water and of drowning. And she said, but I'm in this pool, and the water is up to about to my chest, and everybody, and I'm not afraid of the water at all, and all of these people are coming in the pool, and they're all from all times of my life. They are from my early years as a musician in Holland, and then they are from just my students from a few years ago. She said, many, many people, and they were all coming up to me, and they were saying, good job.